How long have you been working on this article from scratch?
I think it was like 11 p.m. and now it's almost 3 a.m. So, okay, so like 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. So that's 4 hours. I would say this is pretty good for 4 hours. Usually it takes longer.
Tell us more about what happened in the last 4 hours.
Well, first it had to do with deciding, like, I mean, I knew what I wanted the article to be about, but it was like, how do I want to say it? Like, I knew because it was about me, and it also ended up being about Nick. So it's about both of us. Actually, I should edit this really quick. There's this one paragraph that ended up really big. It needs to be 2 paragraphs because it looks unnatural. No, actually, I think it's fine. Anyway, basically, it's about the first time that I met Nick. Uh, it's about me. It's the very first introduction that I get in the book Year 18 Alec, which is about me. The first proper introduction. So, like, this is Alec Mr. 5, this is who he is. It's the first introduction that I am given throughout the entire book. Excuse me. It is 3 a.m. So anyway, there was a certain context of my past and personal life that was the reason that when Nick told me about Thumoslang, which was all on video, by the way, why I immediately got into it. And the way that I decided to write this chapter after I started was to basically introduce that context to the reader, which is also why I think this is probably the best ad for Thumoslang104 that's ever existed. It might be the only ad for Thumoslang104 that's ever existed, which would mean it is the best ad, which is good to know, because then I have the best ad for Thumoslang104 made by me. But yeah, I hope I was clear in my explanation of how it was written.
How is it written?
I guess not. So there were reasons in my from the experiences that I've had in my personal life and the views that I've developed that led me to like hearing about Thumoslang and very quickly deciding, oh, I need to know about this. I need to know. I should learn this because this is what I need. So there are a few ways I thought about writing this chapter. Chapter 17 of the book Year 18 Alec, because it is the chapter that first introduces me in the book that is about me. So, aside from knowing my name and maybe a few basic facts about me, you don't really get to know me in this book until you arrive at chapter 7. The closest you get is chapter 6, which is a lot of talking about from Jerrison's perspective, a good friend of mine, what it was like to meet me. but there was not a direct way of getting to know me in the book until chapter 7, which is the chapter that I just wrote. It's currently 3:01 a.m. and I had just finished and started at 11 p.m. yesterday. The way that I decided to go with writing this chapter was it's about the first one-on-one meeting that Nick and I had ever had, which is when he told me about what Thumoslang was, which is what he created. Now, plenty of people in my social circles know about what Thumoslang is, and maybe even know a little bit about how to use it, but it's not that prevalent to see people going out of their way to learn Thumoslang. And what I've seen is that the people who go for learning it, especially people like Jerison and myself, who continue to, I think, at this point, over a year after initially getting to know about it, usually have something going on either in their heads or in their lives that make them need it immediately. So there was a certain context like that for me at the time that I got to knowing what it was. So that's the context that I want to make clear in chapter 7, which is what I think I've been able to do, but you can be the judge of that because I'm going to read chapter 7 to you now. So, chapter 7 of Year 18 Alec is titled Alec Mustafayev. Journey, that means self-discovery. On November 28th, 2019, Alec Mustafayev and Nick Anthony Quach met for the second time in their lives, and for the first time in a one-on-one setting. Alec would later describe this meeting, recorded by the YouTube series Thumoslang104, as the start of the most important journey he'd ever set out on, and the one that would lead to the outcome of the rest of his life. As Jerison observed, Alec felt like an outsider in the space where they first met. Though Alec, in his introverted nature, more often observed people than interacted with them, he had come to a very particular conclusion about the way people interacted with one another. The reason that so many of his peers struggled with unwanted drama plaguing their lives, and the reason that he often failed to be more than an outsider in most social settings, was because communication as a whole lacked a means of establishing common ground between individuals. Once this explanation occurred to him, it became clear why strangers never felt free to strike up conversations with each other, why all people could attest to being in a situation where they were unfairly judged, and why a noble desire to make things better for all people was hard to explain in a way that didn't sound childish. Nick Anthony was described by those around him as a philosopher, mentor, and friend. This wasn't always the role he played, however. A few weeks before the September 11th attacks, Nick Anthony walked his son to school on his first day in first grade. On the walk back home, between their goodbye and the first stop sign, It dawned on Nick that for the entirety of raising his son up to that point, he had been a father by default, and never a father by design. "What kind of father," asked Nick, "do I truly want to become?" As he grew up, he was never impressed with the way parenting was overall discharged by many in real life, as well as by their counterparts in fiction. They often came up with too many rules for their children, but had a hard time remembering most of, and, more importantly, applying their own rules in front of their children. With determination, Nick spent several hours every night in the following week to figure out what it would take for him to become the first ever perfect father. The result is a 5-word lesson, later referred to as the first Thumos mantra. Once a week throughout first grade, he talked to his son about it, often while his son was bored sitting in the back seat on the way to various places around the town. 14 years later, and 1,700 miles away, on the Henderson Bridge of Rhode Island, a senior student at Brown University told Nick about the trouble he was having in their relationship with his parents over the recent years. Armed with only the 5-word mantra, he was able to erase the biggest relationship problem in his life at the time using those 5 words. The result that those 5 words would have on Alec Mustafayev 18 years later would reshape his social life as a whole and cause him to view the world in a completely different way. And I think it could use a few edits, but overall, I think it gets its job done. It'll definitely make watching Thumoslang104 a lot more insightful as to what I'm thinking as I watch the videos that play on screen. And especially if you already watched Thumoslang104 once, it's a perfect new context to rewatch it in. I'd say it's even the proper way to watch it if you really want to get into the story it's telling with me absorbing all the material, since I do stay pretty quiet most of the time. I think this book is going to turn out very good, with a chapter every day especially. And it's only the 7th, so I'm looking forward to keep this going.